Aloha and welcome Speaker Saiki to Transform Hawaii Government's Digital Talk Story Series. Nice to have you today.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, Christine.
Thank you. On the Digital Talk Story session, we will be talking about how local government leaders are really trying to advance technology and government services and what's sort of going on in state government nowadays. And so thank you again for speaking with us. So let's just jump right into it, Speaker Saiki. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially with the experience of the pandemic, how has technology impacted your daily life?
Yeah, so I think like everybody else, I probably was not prepared, in my personal life for all of the changes that were going to be happening. More so with the House of Representatives, we had to just totally pivot once the pandemic hit, like everybody else, and make changes in how we operate here.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the success stories that came out of the pandemic with the legislature is your House COVID committee. And that was a really great reflection of how the public sector and the private sector can really come together to really address, community needs as they come up and as they arise. And so I wanted to thank you for that. Is that committee still continuing? And how has a partnership like that and the experience of really working together through that partnership, how are you able to carry it forward?
Yeah, so I'm really proud of the House COVID committee and all the members, and to the House for supporting that effort. I think in a lot of respects, it was probably an unprecedented effort to have so many people from the private sector, nonprofit sector, and then also from the government sector, working together. We had a common purpose, which was to see how we could address the impact, the economic and financial impact of COVID-19. And the committee did some real groundbreaking work. It was the committee that helped to create the public health protocols that were adopted by the state as well as by all the counties. The committee worked on the statewide safe travels policy. The committee worked on opening the mass vaccination centers at Pier 2 and Blaisdell. That was through Hawaii Pacific Health and Queens Medical Center. Those two centers alone probably accounted for over 350,000 people being vaccinated.
That's incredible.
Between January through now, which is why we're at a 60% vaccination rate today. So the committee did take a break while we were in the regular session, from January, but we just held a meeting last week to give an economic update and as well as a public health update. And so we're going to continue to have regular meetings.
Taking that experience and pivoting to technology a little bit, were there some things that surfaced in the legislative session around preparedness of the government regarding technology? A lot of state workers started working from home. People started working from home. They needed reliable access to the internet, but also access to the internet to access government services. Any revelations that came out or appreciations that stick out in your mind from that experience?
Yeah, so the one thing that really hit the legislature directly was having an IT system set up so that we could hold public hearings during the past session that started in January 2021. Mm-hmm. So after the shutdown occurred in 2020, we realized that we would have to be prepared for, how to handle public hearings going forward. So our IT staff in the House and the Senate worked really, really hard, and just within a matter of months, they put up this a system for us to hold hearings, virtual public hearings at the Capitol. Because the building was closed during the session, so the public could not participate in person, but we did allow for virtual participation. And, they basically, our IT staff had to work from ground zero because there was nothing really in place at that time. So they basically, they rewired the rooms. We had to purchase new equipment. Everything was just tested repeatedly. And I have to say that there were really once this went into effect in January, there were really no problems with the system. I think everything went so smoothly. We didn't really receive any complaints from the public about access. So we gave everybody an opportunity to participate at hearings, to provide testimony virtually. And I think going forward, depending on what the numbers, the COVID numbers look like for next session in January, I think we'll continue a hybrid system where we will, if we're able to open the building, we'll allow for public participation, but as well as virtual participation. So it'll be a hybrid system going forward, depending on the COVID numbers.
Yeah, and Transform Hawaii government benefited from that this past legislative session. We did testify on some bills regarding modernization of government services. It was very easy. We got to see the recordings on YouTube, and it really provided a great example for the community and how government and the community can interact together. And so I hope that spirit really continues moving forward, regardless of where we are in the pandemic.
Yeah, and the legislature, unlike a lot of other government agencies, has an advantage because we have more flexibility when we want to change course and implement a new IT system. We have the flexibility to do that. Not all of the other government agencies have that same flexibility. And I think for the past several years, one of the objectives of the House of Representatives has been to see how we can modernize government.
Yeah.
And the pandemic just showed us why that is so important, that government services, government operations be modernized, be high tech, because it enables us to deliver services more effectively to the public.
Oh, that's music to my ears. Absolutely. And, pivoting away from the legislature and the successes that you've described to government operations, as you head into even the next legislative session, are there some things that you'd like to see regarding improvement of government operations, efficiencies, moving off of paper, replacing that with not just technology, but also with streamlined processes? Yeah,
absolutely. And I'll give you another example. When we worked with Hawaii Pacific Health in Queens to open the mass vaccination centers at Pier 2 and at the Blaisdell in January, this past January, we learned that both of those locations had insufficient Wi-Fi capability. So within a matter of like 2 weeks, Hawaiian Tel, we call it Hawaiian Tel. Hawaiian Tel came in and rewired. They actually had to install infrastructure, and they rewired Pier 2 and the Blaisdell so that we could stand up these mass vac centers. But that shows us how our government facilities, we just have to make the effort to upgrade all of our facilities. It's always been kind of frustrating for years and years and years now. We work on funding IT improvements at our public schools, and the common response that we get back is, from the schools is, hey, we can't set up all these computers because we don't have enough electrical capacity on our campus. So it's just basic infrastructure things. I'm kind of hopeful that the federal the federal legislation that will hopefully provide funding for broadband will help us improve IT in our state government.
Regarding the federal funding, it's our understanding, we track it very closely, that this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for the federal government, meaning not the state government and the state taxpayers, to invest in, use the federal dollars to invest in improving infrastructure, and not just the brick and mortar infrastructure, but also the digital infrastructure of the services to respond better. Are you looking for anything in particular from the administration over the next year to help guide what that looks like for state government? Or what would you like to see?
Well, I think the focus, assuming the federal legislation is approved, the focus has to be on broadband. We have to take advantage of those funds and see how we implement that program. We did pass some legislation in May that hopefully will start up that process. But I think that's probably the first priority, because if we can do that, then you're laying the groundwork for it to benefit all kinds of state offices, right? All kinds of agencies.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that it was nice to see in the last legislative session that the legislature approved the broadband office, and they have tall orders to fill regarding broadband in Hawaii. But I hope that's a great start of more things to come. So thank you for your support of that.
Yeah. So once that office starts up, you got to help us recruit people to work there.
Right.
We want good people working in that office.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we're coming up to our time. One question I have is, how can the community, particularly the tech-minded community, the tech-savvy community, help with your efforts to help streamline and modernize government?
I know sometimes it's hard for people to volunteer, but we have boards and commissions that are set up in the tech area where I think we need people, qualified people, to volunteer to serve on these boards, like the Hawaii Tech Development Hawaii Tech Development Corporation, HTDC. We just need cutting edge kind of people to serve on these committees.
Well, from my perspective at Transform Hawaii Government, we'll definitely continue to look into that and share what we can about what the openings are. And thanks to your support, I do sit on the IT steering committee that's attached to the state CIO, and there's new members on that committee. And I know one of the things that they're looking at in the second half of this year is updating the strategic IT plan for the state of Hawaii. And that's great to hear, because we've been big supporters of that. So is there anything that you'd like to see, in terms of an IT strategy for the state of Hawaii that would really help advance our efforts, especially with the lessons learned coming out of the pandemic?
Well, I think so. One thing that you mentioned is the IT steering committee. I think once a report is issued, I think it would help if the larger community, I know the last thing they want to do is read a government report, but I think if people read it and study it and analyze it and help us to keep track of it, because we don't want reports like that to just end up on a bookshelf somewhere and just collect dust. So I think the larger community has to be involved in how to implement these kinds of recommendations. I think the other area that we need to focus on is how IT can assist our public schools.
Yeah.
I think that, we've seen so many problems with distance learning and, all those IT issues. And I really think that if we can develop a good system at the DOE, it will really help our students. I think that, I would like to see a situation one day where you could have the top math teachers in the state teaching students virtually from throughout the state, from all the islands. They could Zoom in for these classes. It could happen with the Native Hawaiian language program. But we have to have the infrastructure and the technology, the capability in order to do that.
Speaker Saiki, I want to thank you for spending time with Transform Hawaii Government and just sharing your thoughts with us and your perspectives with us over the last ledge session. And we really look forward to continuing to work with you in 2022.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for all of your support, Christine, over the years. And I'm also looking forward to working with you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.